Hey guys, tonight we are forging the fortress for the mind. The breastplate protects the heart, but the helmet protects the soul. We are joining the medieval helmet maker. We are going to hammer a single flat sheet of steel into a complex three-dimensional dome that can deflect a war arrow. This is a story about curves, glancing surfaces, and the face of war. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Now, hear the ring of the raising hammer, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The workshop is dim in the early morning, lit only by the glow of the forge. The coals breathe red and orange, waiting. The air already carries the sharp tang of metal and carbon, the smell that never quite leaves this place, the smell that lives in the beams above and the packed earth below. You can taste it when you breathe deep. Iron and fire, sweat and smoke. This is where protection is born, where vulnerability meets metallurgy, where a man's life is measured in the thickness of worked steel between his skull and a swinging blade. The armorer stands before his workbench, hands dark with old burns and newer calluses. He has made breastplates, he has made gauntlets, he has shaped pauldrons for shoulders and greaves for shins. He has riveted mail and fitted straps and measured the distance between a man's spine and his sternum. But the helmet is different. The helmet is always different. Body armor can be segmented, overlapped, articulated. The torso can wear plates that shift and slide. The arms can bend in sections. The legs can step in hinged protection, but the head must turn. The head must move in all directions. The head contains everything a man is: memory, vision, thought. The soul sits behind the eyes, and the helmet must guard it without crushing it. He reaches for the plate. It leans against the stone wall where he left it the night before, a single sheet of low-carbon steel, roughly rectangular, cold to the touch in the morning chill. It is perhaps 3 feet wide, 4 feet tall, the surface already cleaned of scale and rust by his apprentice with wire brushes and sand. The metal has a dull grey finish, waiting. It weighs perhaps 20 pounds, maybe 25, heavy enough to remind you it is serious, light enough to work without breaking yourself. He lifts it with both hands, feeling the balance, the way it wants to flex just slightly if you apply pressure to the center. This flex is good. This flex means the carbon content is low, means the steel will stretch under the hammer rather than shatter. High carbon steel is for edges, for swords and daggers, for things that must hold a killing sharpness. But armor steel must be forgiving. Armor steel must absorb impact and spread force. It must bend before it breaks. He carries the plate to the forge. The coals have been building heat for an hour now, fed carefully by the apprentice who pumped the bellows in steady rhythm while the master examined his materials. The apprentice is young, maybe 14, his arms already ropey with muscle from this work. He knows when to pump and when to wait. He knows the color of the coals, the sound they make when they are ready. He steps back now as the master approaches, giving room, watching, always watching. This is how the craft passes. Not through words, but through watching, through the 1,000 small movements that become instinct over years. The master slides the plate into the forge, letting it rest on a bed of iron bars that keep it above the coals but surrounded by heat. The fire breathes around the steel. The apprentice works the bellows again, gentle now, feeding oxygen, coaxing the temperature higher. Heat moves in waves through metal. You cannot rush it. Force too much heat too fast, and the surface will scale badly, will burn before the core is ready. But wait, let the warmth penetrate. Let every molecule in that sheet of steel begin to move faster, to loosen its bonds, and the metal will tell you when it is ready. They wait. The master runs his hands through a bucket of water, washing away the dust, preparing. His tools are laid out on the bench behind him. The raising hammer, 3 pounds of steel with one face flat and one face crowned, rounded like the top of a man's head. The ball stake, a massive cone of hardened iron that rises from a stump of oak, its tip rounded smooth from 10,000 impacts. The tongs with long handles and broad jaws. The quenching trough filled with water from the well. Everything in its place, everything ready. steel begins to change color. First a faint brown like rust accelerating, then a purple that seems to shimmer, then blue climbing toward red. The red starts at the edges where the heat penetrates first, spreading inward like a slow tide. Cherry red, blood red, the color of sunsets and forge fires. The master watches. Not yet. The red deepens, brightens. Now, he takes the tongs, grips the edge of the plate, lifts it free from the coals. It glows in the dim workshop like a piece of captured sun. Heat radiates from its surface in waves you can feel against your face, even from feet away. The apprentice steps back further. This is the dangerous moment. This is when men get burned. The master carries the glowing plate to the bowl stake, moving with the careful speed of long practice. Not too fast, or the tongs might slip. Not too slow, or the heat will fade. He lays the center of the plate over the rounded top of the stake, the metal draping slightly on either side. The plate is still flat, still planar, but now it rests on a curved surface, and this is where transformation begins. He takes the raising hammer in his right hand, feels its familiar weight, the smooth hickory handle worn to the shape of his palm. He lifts the hammer, he brings it down. Ring! The sound fills the workshop, pure and clean, a bell note that hangs in the air for a moment before fading. The hammer face strikes the glowing steel just off-center, where the plate meets the curve of the stake. The metal yields, stretches infinitesimally, pushed by the hammer, shaped by the anvil beneath. One blow, one note, one small victory. He lifts the hammer, he brings it down. Ring! Again, beside the first impact, a hand's width away, moving in a circle around the center point. The steel compresses where the hammer strikes, but more importantly, it stretches outward from that compression. The material has to go somewhere. Press down on a flat sheet against a curved surface, and the sheet must rise, must dome, must begin to accept the three-dimensional form that the craftsman imposes. Ring! He moves with rhythm now, each blow following the last in steady tempo. Not fast, not slow. The pace of a heartbeat, of a walking step, of time measured in muscle and breath. His arm rises and falls. The hammer kisses the steel. The stake absorbs the impact. The metal sings. Ring, ring, ring. The first circle complete, he rotates the plate slightly in the tongs, begins another circuit, slightly further from the center. The glowing steel starts to show the faintest suggestion of a dome, a gentle rise in the middle where moments before there was only flatness. It is barely visible, this change, perhaps the depth of a thumbnail, but it is there. The metal remembers what you teach it. The metal learns. Rings, ring, ring, ring. The heat is already fading. The cherry red dims toward orange. Orange moves toward brown. The metal stiffens as it cools, becoming harder to work, resisting the hammer. The master feels this in the feedback through the handle, in the way the steel bounces the hammer back with more authority. He sets the hammer down, takes the tongs, carries the plate back to the forge. The coals welcome it, embrace it, and the heat returns. The apprentice pumps the bellows. The red blooms again across the surface. This is the rhythm of raising. Heat and hammer, hammer and heat. You cannot keep the steel at working temperature long enough to finish the shape in one session. The mass of the metal bleeds heat too quickly, radiating it into the air, conducting it down the length of the plate. So you work in intervals. Heat until the color is right. Hammer while the steel is soft. Return to the fire. Heat again. Hammer again. Over and over. Hour after hour. The master lifts the plate from the coals once more. Back to the bowl stake. Back to the hammer. He finds his place. The last point where his hammer fell begins the next circuit. The dome is growing, visible now, rising from the center of the plate like a bubble forming in thick liquid. The circumference of his impacts moves outward, always working in circles, always moving from center toward edge, coaxing the metal upward, stretching it into the shape that will one day protect a man's skull. Rings, ring, 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 ring. His shoulder burns with the effort. 3 pounds does not sound heavy until you lift it 10,000 times. The hammer rises and falls, and each fall must be controlled, must strike with precision, must land exactly where the eye directs. Miss by an inch, and you create an irregularity, a flat spot in the curve, a weakness where force will concentrate instead of deflect. The raising of a dome demands perfection in 10,000 tiny moments. Rings, 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 ring, ring, ring. Back to the forge. The red fades too quickly now. He is working the center of the mass, where the metal is thickest, where the heat penetrates most slowly. He leaves it longer in the coals this time, watching the color deepen, ensuring the warmth reaches all the way through. The apprentice maintains the bellows at a steady rhythm. The fire breathes. The steel drinks heat. Out again, to the stake. The hammer lifts, the hammer falls. Ring! The sound is changing slightly as the metal changes shape. A flatter piece rings differently than a curved piece. The pitch is higher now, tighter, the note more focused. The metal is tensioning as it stretches, the molecules aligning, the crystal structure deforming in ways that increase strength even as they increase complexity. This is the paradox of metalworking. You make steel stronger by making it more complicated. You make it more durable by stressing it. The hammer blows that seem violent are actually acts of creation, imposing order on chaos, geometry on formlessness. Rings, ring, rings, rings, ring, ring, ring. The circuits continue, ever widening. The dome rises further. It is perhaps 4 inches deep now, a noticeable bowl shape emerging from what was once flat. The edges of the plate still lie relatively flat, but the center has accepted its new reality. It is becoming a crown, the top of a helmet, the first curve of protection. But it is not enough. 4 inches is not enough. The Great Helm needs depth, needs volume, needs to enclose the entire head with room for padding beneath. The dome must rise higher. He returns to the forge. The pattern is automatic now, beyond thought. His body knows when the heat has faded. His hands know the weight of the tongs. His eyes know the color of working temperature. He does not count the heating cycles. He does not measure the time. He simply works, lets the craft flow through him, becomes the hammer and the steel and the fire all at once. The hours pass. Morning light strengthens outside, filtering through the high windows in dusty shafts. The workshop warms with the heat of the forge and the heat of labor. The master's shirt is dark with sweat despite the winter cold beyond the walls. The apprentice refills the coal scuttle twice, bringing fresh fuel from the storage shed, dumping it beside the forge where it waits to feed the hungry fire. Rings, ring, ring, rings, rings, ring, ring, ring. The sound becomes meditation. The ringing fills your mind, pushes out other thoughts, creates a space where only the work exists. This is why men do this. Not for money, though money is necessary. Not for status, though a good armorer is respected. They do this because the work itself is a kind of prayer, a physical manifestation of focus and will. Every blow of the hammer is an intention made real. Every circuit around the dome is a mandala of force and form. The dome is deeper now, perhaps 6 inches, then 7. The curve is smooth, organic, like the inside of a bowl or the hollow of a hand. The master examines it critically during the heating cycles, running his eyes over the surface, looking for irregularities. There is a slight flat spot on one side, a place where the stretching was not quite even. He addresses it in the next round, hammering carefully around the periphery of the flaw, encouraging the metal to even out, to smooth itself into continuous curve. Ring, ring, ring. The flat spot yields, flowing into the general shape. The dome continues to grow. But there is a problem developing, a challenge inherent in this process. As the center of the plate rises, the edges must accommodate this rise. The circumference of the base is trying to remain constant while the circumference of the dome increases with every hammer blow. The metal cannot simply disappear. The edges begin to ripple, to corrugate, developing small waves like the edge of a pie crust. This is expected. This is normal, but it must be managed. The master shifts his strategy. Instead of working only in the center, he begins to address the edge, hammering the ripples flat, working them back into the plane of the base. This is delicate work. Too much force and the edge will crack. Too little and the ripples will set, becoming permanent features that must later be cut away. He adjusts the angle of his hammer, the force of his blows, working with finesse rather than power. Rings, ring, 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 ring. The edge smooths, the ripples fade. The base remains relatively flat while the dome continues to rise above it. 8 inches now. 9. The plate is transforming, no longer recognizable as the flat rectangle it once was. It has become something new, something with interior space, with volume, with purpose. Back to the forge, always back to the forge. The steel must be kept at temperature. Let it cool too much and you risk cracking when you strike. The molecular structure becomes brittle without heat, unable to accommodate the stress of impact. So you heat, and heat again, and heat some more, until the trips to the fire become as automatic as breathing. The apprentice tends the coals, raking them into optimal position, adding fresh fuel when needed, maintaining the precise environment that transforms iron into liquid heat. He is learning by proximity, absorbing the timing, the rhythms, the decisions that the master makes without seeming to make them. Someday he will stand where the master stands. Someday his arm will lift the hammer. But not today. Today he watches and learns and keeps the fire burning. Rings, ring, ring, rings, 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 ring, ring, ring. The master's arm is leaden now, heavy with accumulated fatigue. Hours have passed. The sun has climbed toward noon outside. He sets down the hammer, flexes his fingers, rolls his shoulders. The dome is perhaps 10 inches deep, a good bowl shape, but it needs more. The great helm is tall, must rise above the crown of the head, must provide clearance for padding, must create a void between skull and steel where impact can be absorbed and distributed. He drinks from a ladle of water, the liquid cool against his parched throat. The heat of the forge dehydrates you faster than you realize. You sweat and forget to drink, and by afternoon you are running on will alone. The apprentice offers bread and cheese, a midday meal eaten standing, eaten quickly, eaten with hands still trembling slightly from the repetitive shock of hammer work. The master eats without tasting, fuel for the body, nothing more. Then back to the work, back to the hammer, back to the ring. The steel glows red once more, pulled from the coals where it has been heating while he ate. The color is perfect, that precise shade between cherry and orange that means the molecules are excited, but not so excited that they will burn, will scale, will lose their integrity. He positions the plate on the ball stake, finds his rhythm again. Rings, ring, rings, rings, ring, ring, ring. But now something else must happen. The raising has progressed far enough that the dome is deep, but it is still too round, too bowl-like. The Great Helm is not a simple hemisphere. It is cylindrical at the sides, vertical walls that descend from the crown to protect the face and neck. The shape must transition from dome to cylinder, must carry the curve down, and then straighten, creating a bucket form that will enclose the head completely. This is the next challenge. This is where skill separates from mere labor. The master changes his approach. Instead of hammering in horizontal circuits around the dome, he begins to work in vertical lines, hammering from the apex of the dome downward toward the edge, encouraging the metal to drop, to lengthen, to form sides. Each blow compresses the steel slightly in thickness while extending it in length. The dome, which has been growing upward, now begins to grow downward as well, the edges extending, the sides forming. Rings, 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 ring, ring, ring. He works around the circumference, hammering a vertical line, rotating the plate, hammering another line, rotating again. The sides begin to drop. The bucket shape emerges. But the metal resists this transformation more than it resisted becoming a dome. Steel wants to curve. Steel loves circles and arcs. But steel does not naturally want to be flat after it has been curved. Forcing a curved piece to straighten requires more heat, more hammer blows, more patience. Back to the forge. The pattern continues. Heat, hammer, heat, hammer. The rhythm is eternal, unchanging, a meditation in metal. Rings, ring, ring, rings, rings, ring, ring, ring. The afternoon light slants lower through the windows. Shadows lengthen across the workshop floor. The master does not stop. The work continues. The sides drop further inch by inch, blow by blow. The helmet is taking its final shape now, a tall cylinder with a domed top, rough still, unfinished but recognizable. This is protection. This is armor. This is the difference between life and death in a moment of combat. But the metal is suffering. All this working, all this heating and hammering, all this molecular rearrangement creates stress in the steel. The crystal structure is deforming, aligning, hardening in ways that make it brittle. You can feel it in the ring of the hammer. The note has changed again, higher, sharper, more brittle. The steel is approaching the limit of what it can endure without breaking. This is where annealing becomes critical. This is where the science of metallurgy becomes as important as the art of shaping. The master sets down his hammer. He carries the helmet form to the forge one more time, but this time he does not intend to return immediately to hammering. This time he is going to heal the steel, to undo the damage he has intentionally inflicted, to reset the molecular structure so the work can continue. He buries the helmet completely in the coals, covering it, surrounding it with heat from all sides. The apprentice works the bellows steadily, bringing the fire to maximum temperature. The steel heats past red, toward orange, toward yellow. The color climbs the spectrum as the temperature increases. The metal is returning to a state approaching its original form, before the hammer, before the stress, before the change. At welding heat, nearly yellow-white, the master stops. He signals the apprentice to stop pumping. The bellows fall silent. The fire begins to die slowly, cooling, the coals gradually darkening from white to yellow to orange to red to black. The helmet remains buried in the coals, cooling with them, dropping temperature at the slowest possible rate. This is annealing. This is the reset. As the steel cools slowly, the crystal structure reforms, the molecules find new equilibrium, the stress dissolves, the brittleness fades. The metal becomes soft again, workable again, ready to endure more hammering without shattering. This process cannot be rushed. Quench this heat in water and the steel would become glass hard, impossibly brittle, useless for armor. But let it cool slowly, naturally, at its own pace, and it softens, becomes forgiving again. They wait. The master sits on a stool near the forge, finally resting, letting his arm recover, letting his shoulder unknot. The apprentice sits on the floor, back against the wall, eyes heavy. The workshop is quiet except for the occasional pop and crackle of cooling coals. Outside, the winter afternoon fades toward evening. The light through the windows turns golden, then orange, then dim. An hour passes, 2 hours. The coals are gray now, ash-covered, barely warm. The master stirs them with an iron rod, uncovering the helmet. It is black with scale, the surface oxidized by the long exposure to heat, but it is cool enough to touch. He lifts it from the forge with bare hands, carries it to the workbench, sets it down. Tomorrow he will heat it again. Tomorrow the hammer will ring again. Tomorrow the shaping will continue. But tonight the work is done. The steel has been raised, has been formed, has been annealed. The basic dome and bucket shape exists. The Great Helm is emerging from the flat plate, transformed by fire and force and the steady rhythm of skilled hands. The master covers his tools with oiled cloth, protecting them from the moisture of night. The apprentice banks the forge, arranging coals and ash to keep a small core of fire alive until morning, a seed of heat that will make tomorrow's starting easier. They clean the workspace, sweeping scale and coal dust, returning order to the chaos of creation. The helmet sits on the bench, rough and black, but unmistakable. A single flat sheet has become a three-dimensional form. Metal has been taught to curve, to rise, to enclose space. This is the first transformation, the foundation of everything that follows. But it is only the beginning. The bucket shape must be refined, the sides must be made truly vertical, the edge must be flattened and evened, the vision ports must be cut, the breathing holes must be pierced, the edges must be rolled, the surface must be planished smooth, the metal must be hardened, the final shape must emerge. That work waits for tomorrow and the days after and the weeks beyond. The creation of a great helm is not a single day's work. It is a campaign, a siege against formlessness, 1 inch by inch and blow by blow. Ring, ring, ring. The sound echoes in memory even after the hammer is still. The master hears it in his sleep sometimes, that pure note of steel on steel, the song of transformation, the voice of his craft. It is a sound that connects him to every armorer who came before, every smith who raised a dome, every craftsman who understood that protection is not found, but made, not given, but forged, not wished for, but hammered into existence one blow at a time. The apprentice extinguishes the tallow candles that have been lit as darkness fell. The workshop falls into shadow, lit only by the faint glow of the banked forge. They leave through the heavy oak door, stepping out into the cold evening air. The master's right arm hangs heavy at his side, the muscles trembling slightly with exhaustion. By morning, the soreness will have settled deep into the shoulder and back. By morning, it will hurt to lift his arm. But by morning, he will lift it anyway, because the work is not finished. The work is never finished. There is always another helm to make, another knight to protect, another life hanging in the balance of well-forged steel. This is the burden and the glory of the craft. This is the weight the armorer carries, knowing that somewhere, sometime, a man will bet his life on the quality of this work. Will the dome be smooth enough to turn a lance point? Will the sides be strong enough to stop a sword edge? Will the metal be properly hardened, properly tempered, properly finished? These questions drive the work. These questions inform every hammer blow, every heating cycle, every careful inspection. The armorer does not make decorations. The armorer makes the difference between a widow and a wife, between an orphan and a son with a father. This weight sits on his shoulders heavier than any hammer. Inside the now dark workshop, the helmet waits on the bench, silent, patient, incomplete. The metal remembers every blow it has received. The shape holds every intention the craftsman imposed. Tomorrow the transformation will continue. Tomorrow the ring will sound again. Tomorrow the steel will grow closer to its final purpose. But tonight there is rest. Tonight there is the satisfaction of progress made, of obstacles overcome, of flat plate becoming curved form. Tonight there is the deep sleep of honest labor, of muscles used fully, of skills employed in service of something greater than mere commerce. The master walks through the dark streets toward home, his mind already on tomorrow. He sees the sequence of work ahead, more raising to finalize the bucket shape, then the cutting of the face, then the rolling of the edges, then the planishing, then the hardening. Each step is clear in his mind, a pathway mapped by experience and training. He knows what must be done. He knows how to do it. Tomorrow he will do it. The apprentice follows a few paces behind, his younger legs less weary, his mind full of questions he dare not yet ask. How does the master know when the steel is hot enough? How does he keep the dome so smooth? How much force is needed for each blow? The answers will come with time, with watching, with eventually doing. For now, he carries the questions and tends the fire and sweeps the floor and watches. Always watches. The moon rises over the town, silver light falling on stone buildings and narrow streets. Somewhere in the castle above, knights sleep in their chambers, their armor hanging on wooden stands, waiting for war or tournament. Some of those helms were made here in this workshop, by this master or the master before him. The lineage of the craft stretches back generations, father teaching son, master training apprentice, knowledge passing like a flame from torch to torch. The Great Helm on the bench is part of this lineage. It carries forward techniques developed over centuries, refined by countless smiths, tested in countless battles. The dome shape is not arbitrary. Men died to teach armorers that flat surfaces catch blows while curved surfaces deflect them. Men died to teach that low-carbon steel absorbs impact better than high-carbon. Men died to teach the importance of proper annealing, proper hardening, proper fit. Their deaths purchased this knowledge. Their blood wrote the textbook. The master honors them by working correctly, by maintaining standards, by refusing to compromise. When he raises that hammer tomorrow, he raises it on behalf of all the smiths who came before and all the warriors who trusted their work. This is sacred labor, though no prayers are spoken. This is holy work, though no blessing is given. The sanctity lies in the doing, in the dedication, in the refusal to accept anything less than the best effort human hands can produce. Ring, ring, ring. The echo of tomorrow's work rings in his mind as he reaches his door, steps inside, greets his wife who has kept his dinner warm by the fire. He eats in silence, too tired for conversation. She understands. She has been married to this work for 20 years. She knows the rhythm of his days, the demands of the craft, the exhaustion that comes from hammering steel for hours on end. He finishes eating, moves to his chair by the fire, sits heavily. His right shoulder throbs with a deep ache that he knows will worse before it is better. He flexes his hand, working the stiffness from his fingers. Tomorrow he will grip the hammer again. Tomorrow the ache will fade in the heat of work. Tomorrow the steel will ring. His mind drifts back to the workshop, to the helmet waiting in the darkness. He can see it clearly in his mind's eye, can trace the curve of the dome, can identify the spots that need more work, can plan the sequence of heats and blows that will refine the shape further. The work is never far from his thoughts. Even at rest, even at table, even in sleep, part of his mind is always in the workshop, always at the forge, always listening for the ring of steel. This is what it means to be a master. The craft consumes you, becomes inseparable from your identity. You are not a man who makes helmets. You are a helmet maker. The distinction is subtle but absolute. The work defines you more than any other aspect of your life. Your children know you by the smell of coal smoke in your clothes. Your wife knows you by the calluses on your hands. Your neighbors know you by the ringing that echoes from your workshop from dawn until dark. You do not choose this life so much as it chooses you. Something in your temperament fits the work. Something in your soul resonates with the sound of hammer on steel. You feel satisfaction in transforming raw material into finished purpose in a way that others might never understand. The ring of the hammer is your heartbeat. The glow of hot steel is your sunrise. The slow emergence of form from formlessness is your art, your music, your poetry. Ring, ring, ring. Tomorrow the hammer will rise. Tomorrow the steel will heat. Tomorrow the work will continue. The great helm will grow closer to completion, one blow at a time, one heating cycle at a time, one careful increment at a time. There are no shortcuts. There is no rushing the process. The metal moves at its own pace, accepts change on its own terms, yields only to patient application of heat and force and skill. The master understands this patience. He has learned it over decades of work. He knows that trying to force the steel, trying to hurry the shaping, leads only to failure. Crack a piece by hammering it too cold, and you must start over. Burn a piece by heating it too hot, and you must start over. Rush the annealing, and the metal will betray you later, shattering under stress when a man's life depends on its strength. So you work slowly. You work carefully. You work with the deep patience of someone who understands that quality cannot be hurried, that excellence demands time, that the difference between good enough and truly good is measured in extra hours of effort that no one will ever see. The helmet on the bench represents hours of invisible labor. The smooth curve of the dome hides 10,000 hammer blows. The even thickness conceals countless trips to the forge. The emerging bucket shape contains uncounted decisions, adjustments, corrections. All of this work is invisible to the knight who will eventually wear the helm. He will see only the finished product, will judge only whether it fits and whether it protects. This is as it should be. The craft serves the function. The process serves the product. The armorer's ego must be sublimated to the need for protection. It does not matter if anyone knows how difficult the raising was, how many times the steel was annealed, how sore the master's shoulder became. What matters is that the helm turns arrows, stops swords, saves lives. This is the discipline of the craft. This is the humility required. You pour your skill into creating something whose success is measured by being unnoticed. A knight who never thinks about his helmet is a knight whose helmet is doing its job. The armor is there only for the moment of impact, the split second when force meets resistance, when steel decides whether flesh beneath it lives or dies. For that moment, everything must be perfect. For that moment, every hammer blow matters. For that moment, the difference between careful work and careless work is the difference between everything and nothing. Ring, ring, ring. The sound will begin again tomorrow. The raising will continue. The bucket shape will be refined. The great helm will progress toward its destiny, toward the day when it sits on a knight's head in battle, when all this patient labor is tested against the chaos of combat. But tonight the work rests. Tonight the steel is cool and still. Tonight the hammer sleeps beside its anvil. Tonight the master sits by his fire and lets his muscles recover and his mind settle and his soul prepare for the work ahead. Outside the moon climbs higher, flooding the town with silver light. Inside the workshop, dust motes drift through darkness, settling on tools and bench and the rough black shape of the emerging helmet. The fire in the forge holds its core of heat, glowing faintly under the ash, keeping the promise of tomorrow's warmth. The work is never finished, but each day's work is complete unto itself. The master has done what could be done. The steel has been transformed as far as it can be transformed in one day's labor. Tomorrow offers new possibilities, new progress, new challenges. But tonight belongs to rest. The master's eyes grow heavy by the fire. His wife banks the coals, preparing for bed. They move through the familiar rituals of evening, the practiced comfort of routines repeated 10,000 times. Soon the house is dark, quiet, settled for the night. In the workshop, the helmet waits, silent, patient, incomplete. The metal holds its shape, remembers every blow, anticipates the work to come. It is becoming what it is meant to be, one day at a time, one heat at a time, one ring of the hammer at a time. Ring, ring, ring. The echo fades into sleep, into dreams, into the quiet hours before dawn when the world pauses and the work waits and the craft rests, but does not end. Tomorrow the sound will begin again. Tomorrow the steel will glow red. Tomorrow the transformation will continue. But tonight there is only the silence after the ringing, only the cool metal after the heat, only the rest after the labor. And in that rest, in that pause, in that moment between one day's work and the next, there is satisfaction. The master sleeps the sleep of someone who has done honest work, who has moved the project forward, who has applied skill in service of purpose. His shoulder aches, his arm is heavy, his hands are stiff, but his mind is clear. He has done what needed doing. Tomorrow he will do it again. Ring. The last echo fades. The night deepens. The workshop stands dark and still, waiting for morning, waiting for fire, waiting for the hammer to rise again and the steel to sing its song of transformation once more. Morning comes cold and grey, the winter sun struggling through cloud cover, casting weak light across the workshop floor. The master arrives before dawn, his breath visible in the chill air, his shoulder stiff from yesterday's labor. The apprentice is already there, has already uncovered the forge, already begun feeding coal to the embers that waited through the night. The fire responds, growing, warming, preparing for another day of transformation. The helmet sits where it was left, black with scale, rough with hammer marks, the surface textured like beaten earth. It no longer looks like a flat plate. It has volume now, dimension, the basic bucket shape established. But it is far from finished. The surface is crude, covered in overlapping dimples from 10,000 hammer blows. Each impact left its mark, a small depression surrounded by a raised ring. The entire surface is a landscape of these marks, rough to the touch, dull to the eye. This roughness must be erased. The helmet must be smooth, must be uniform, must present an unbroken surface to deflect weapons. Every dimple is a potential catch point, a place where a sword edge might grab instead of slide. Every irregularity is a weakness, a concentration of stress. The planishing will address this, will transform rough into smooth, will bring order to the textured chaos of the raising. The master lifts the helmet, examining it in the growing light. He runs his fingers over the surface, feeling the irregularities, mapping them in his mind. The dome is good, the curve is fair, the bucket shape is true. But the surface tells the story of its creation too clearly. The planishing will hide that story, will present instead a facade of effortless perfection. He carries the helmet to the forge, slides it into the coals. Not as hot as yesterday, not red hot, just warm, warm enough to keep the metal slightly soft, slightly forgiving. Too hot and the planishing hammer will create new marks instead of removing old ones. Too cold and the surface will resist smoothing, will work harden under the repeated blows. The temperature must be precise, controlled, just warm enough. The metal heats slowly, turning from black to dark gray to lighter gray, a faint color creeping into the steel. Brown, purple, just touching blue. Enough. He pulls it from the forge with tongs, carries it to a different anvil. This stake is smooth, polished to a mirror finish, a rounded dome without any tool marks or imperfections. The planishing stake. The surface is hard, unforgiving, perfect. He sets the helmet over the stake, positioning the roughest section directly against the polished steel. His right hand takes a different hammer now, not the raising hammer with its crowned face, the planishing hammer. Both faces perfectly flat, polished smooth, the surfaces worked and refined until they reflect light like water. 3 pounds again, the same weight, but the flat faces change everything about how this tool works. He lifts the hammer, he brings it down. Tinker. The sound is different, higher, sharper, shorter. Where the raising hammer rang like a bell, the planishing hammer tinks like crystal. A brief, pure note that dies almost instantly. The flat face of the hammer meets the raised ring around an old hammer mark, presses it down into the valley of the depression, smoothing both into a more even surface. One blow, one tiny correction, one small movement toward uniformity. He lifts the hammer, he brings it down. Tinker. Again, beside the first spot. The hammer face covers perhaps an inch of surface with each blow. The helmet has perhaps 4 square feet of surface. Simple mathematics. Hundreds of blows, thousands. Each one precisely placed, each one carefully controlled, each one contributing its tiny increment to the transformation of rough into smooth. Tink, tink, tink. He works in small sections, perhaps 6 inches square, hammering in overlapping rows, covering every fraction of the surface. The tempo is faster than the raising. The blows are lighter, more delicate, a different kind of percussion. Not the heavy boom of creation, but the light patter of refinement. Not the forge of transformation, but the finishing of polish. Tink, 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 tink. The metal cools as he works. The faint warmth fades. He returns the helmet to the forge, reheats it gently, brings it back to the stake. The pattern repeats. Heat, heat, planish. But the rhythm is different from yesterday. Faster cycles, less waiting. The metal needs less heat, holds the temperature longer at these lower levels. Tink, 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 tink. The apprentice watches, learning a different lesson today. Yesterday was about force and endurance. Today is about patience and precision. The raising required strength. The planishing requires control. Different muscles, different skills, different mental state. The master's face is calm, focused, but not strained. This work is meditative in a different way, hypnotic in its repetition, soothing in its gentle percussion. Tink, 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 tink. The first section begins to show change. The rough dimples are fading, compressing, evening out. The surface is not yet smooth, but it is smoother, the texture less pronounced, the irregularities less dramatic. The metal is beginning to show a faint sheen where the polished hammer face has compressed and work-hardened the surface. This sheen will grow, will spread, will eventually cover the entire helmet in a uniform finish. He moves to the next section. The hammer rises and falls in steady rhythm. Tink, tink, tink. The sound fills the workshop, a different music than yesterday's ringing, gentler, more insistent, like rain on a metal roof. Tink, tink, tink. The pattern is mesmerizing, draws you in, makes you forget time, makes you focus on nothing but the next blow, the next small correction, the next tiny step toward perfection. Tink, 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 tink. The morning passes in this rhythm. The master works around the dome, section by section, overlapping his strokes, ensuring complete coverage. Where he has worked, the surface is noticeably smoother, showing the beginnings of the finish that will eventually cover the entire piece. Where he has not yet worked, the rough hammer marks remain, a reminder of how far the metal has come and how far it still must go. Back to the forge. The helmet heats again, just warm enough, not too much. The color climbs toward blue and stops. Out to the stake. The hammer lifts. Tink, 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 tink. Hours accumulate. The sun climbs higher, though the cloud cover prevents any dramatic change in light. The workshop remains in its eternal gray twilight, lit more by the forge than by the day outside. The master's right arm is sore again, but differently than yesterday. Yesterday was deep muscle fatigue from heavy lifting. Today is a sharper tiredness, the smaller muscles of wrist and forearm protesting the endless precision, the constant control, the thousands of carefully placed blows. Tink, 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 tink. The helmet is transforming. The rough surface is yielding to smooth. The work-marked metal is becoming polished. Not mirror-bright yet, but heading in that direction, the sheen spreading like sunrise across the curved surface. The master can see his progress clearly now, can see the dividing line between planished and rough, can measure his advancement around the bucket shape. Tink, 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 tink. By midday the dome is finished, smooth, and even, the surface uniform. He begins on the cylindrical sides, the vertical walls that will protect the face and neck. This is trickier work. The curve of the dome provided natural support against the stake. The flatter sides require more careful positioning, more frequent adjustment, more attention to keeping the helmet properly supported while hammering. Tink, 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 tink. He works in vertical strips now, top to bottom, rotating the helmet, another strip, rotating again. The rhythm continues unchanged. The sound is constant. The progress is steady. There is comfort in this predictability, security in knowing exactly what comes next, peace in the absence of surprise. This is the opposite of battle, the antithesis of combat. Battle is chaos and uncertainty. This is order and control. Tink, 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 tink. The apprentice brings water, bread, cheese. The master eats without stopping, chewing while he hammers, swallowing between blows. The work has its own momentum now, carries him forward, makes stopping feel wrong, unnatural. His body has found its rhythm and wants to maintain it, wants to continue the percussion until the task is complete. Tink, 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 tink. The afternoon arrives, barely distinguishable from morning in the grey light. The planishing continues. The smooth area expands, consuming the rough, spreading uniformity across the metal like a tide. The master's movements are automatic now, beyond conscious thought, directed by muscle memory and trained instinct. His mind drifts while his hands work, thinking about the steps ahead, the visor that must be cut, the breaths that must be drilled, the assembly that will complete the piece. Tink, 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 tink. By late afternoon, the entire helmet is planished, the surface uniform, the texture eliminated. He sets down the planishing hammer, flexes his aching wrist, examines his work. The metal glows with a soft sheen, not bright but no longer dull, the surface catching light and reflecting it evenly across the curves. This is good. This is right. The smoothness will help weapons slide away, will reduce friction, will turn edges that might otherwise catch and penetrate. But now comes the paradox, the moment when perfection must be violated, when the smooth surface must be cut, when protection must be balanced against vision and breath. The night needs to see. The night needs to breathe. These necessities demand openings, and openings are vulnerabilities. The art is in making them as small as possible while still serving their function. The master carries the helmet to a different workbench, one equipped with vices and clamps and delicate tools. He secures the helmet carefully, the polished interior protected by leather padding, the exterior facing upward. He has already marked where the cuts must go, thin scratches in the metal from a scribe, guidelines for the work ahead. The eye slits, the ocularium. Two horizontal cuts, perhaps 3 inches long, maybe half an inch high, positioned where a man's eyes would be if the helmet sat on his head. The geometry is critical. Too large and an arrow point can enter, can find the eye, can penetrate the brain. Too small and the night is blind, cannot see attacks coming, cannot fight effectively. The compromise is narrow, carefully calculated by generations of experience, tested by warriors who discovered the limits through trial and error and death. He selects a cold chisel, the edge sharp, the steel hard. The helmet cannot be hot for this work. Heat makes steel soft, makes cutting easier but less precise. This must be done cold, must be cut with force and accuracy, must be controlled completely. He positions the chisel at one end of the marked line, angles it slightly, raises a small hammer. The blow is sharp, focused, precise. The chisel bites into the smooth surface, creating a small dimple, the beginning of penetration. He strikes again. The dimple deepens. Again. The chisel breaks through, creating a small hole in the steel. He works along the marked line, chisel cut by chisel cut, perforating the metal in a series of small holes like a dotted line waiting to be torn. The holes complete, he switches tools. A narrow file now, sharp-toothed, designed for metalwork. He inserts the file through one of the holes, begins working back and forth, enlarging the opening, connecting one hole to the next, creating a continuous slot. The file scrapes against steel, a harsh sound, rough and insistent. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The metal resists but yields, particles of steel falling away with each stroke, the slot slowly growing. Scritch, 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 scritch. This is slow work, tedious work, work that requires steady hands and unlimited patience. The file removes metal a tiny fraction at a time. The slot grows by increments measured in fractions of inches. But the master does not hurry, cannot hurry. Rushing this work leads to mistakes, to irregular cuts, to weaknesses in the edge that will rust or crack or fail when stressed. Scritch, 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 scritch. The first eye slit takes an hour to complete. The edges must be smooth, must be filed clean, must present no sharp points to cut the knight's face or catch on mail beneath. He works the file carefully around the perimeter of the cut, smoothing, refining, checking with his fingers for any roughness. The metal must be kind to the flesh it protects. He moves to the second eye slit, repeats the process. Chisel first, punching through, creating the perforation. Then the file, working methodically, enlarging the opening, creating the slot. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound is constant, hypnotic in its own way, different from the tink of planishing or the ring of raising, but equally meditative. The repetitive action empties the mind, creates space for nothing but the work. Scritch, 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 scritch. The second slit completed, he examines both openings. They are matched, symmetrical, positioned correctly. He loosens the vise, rotates the helmet, looks through the eye slits from the inside. The view is narrow, restricted, like looking through mail slots. This is the reality of wearing a great helm. Protection comes at a cost. The knight trades peripheral vision for safety, trades wide sight for narrow survival. In the chaos of battle, these two slim cuts are his entire window on the world. But there is more. The cuts are not simply horizontal slats. They angle slightly, wider on the inside than the outside, creating a funnel that broadens the field of view without enlarging the exterior opening. This geometry is subtle, barely visible, but critical. It gives the knight a few more degrees of vision without giving an attacker a larger target. The metal thickness works in the defender's favor, creating depth that serves protection and sight simultaneously. The master sets down the file, takes up a finer file with smaller teeth. He works the interior angles of the eye slits, smoothing the funnel shape, ensuring the geometry is correct. This is detail work, precision work, work that will never be seen once the padding is installed, but work that matters nonetheless. The craft demands excellence even in the invisible details. Now the breaths, the breathing holes, the ventilation that will prevent a knight from suffocating in his own exhaled air, from overheating in the enclosed space, from drowning in his own sweat during summer campaigns. These holes must be large enough to allow air flow, but small enough to prevent weapon points from entering. The solution is multiple small holes rather than large openings, distributed across the lower face where the mouth and nose would be. The master marks the pattern with his scribe. A cross. 4 holes arranged in the sign of the crucifix, each hole perhaps a quarter-inch in diameter. The pattern serves 2 purposes: functional ventilation and spiritual protection. The cross wards off evil, offers divine protection, reminds the knight that God watches over him in battle. Faith and function combined in 4 small holes. He selects a drill, a hand-powered spiral bit mounted in a wooden handle. The bit is sharp, freshly filed, ready to cut steel. He positions the point at the first marked location, applies pressure, begins to rotate the handle. The drill bites into the metal, creating a tiny divot, finding purchase. He rotates steadily, feeling the resistance, hearing the bite of steel cutting steel. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The drill advances slowly, cutting deeper with each rotation. The sound is rhythmic, insistent, a spiral of friction and progress. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The metal resists but cannot win against patience and pressure. The drill cuts through, breaks into the interior, creates an opening. The first breath. He withdraws the drill, blows away the metal shavings, examines the hole. Clean, round, properly sized. Good. He positions the drill at the second mark, begins again. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The rotation, the pressure, the slow advancement through resistant steel. The second hole emerges, joins the first. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Third hole, fourth hole. The cross is complete. He examines the pattern, checking alignment, checking size, checking that the edges are smooth and free of burrs that might cut flesh. The holes are small, but together they provide significant air flow, will allow a knight to breathe comfortably, even during heavy exertion, even in the heat of summer sun beating down on steel. But one cross is not enough. He marks a second pattern, slightly lower, slightly offset, more holes, more air. The knight will be grateful for these holes when he is fighting for his life, when his breath comes in gasps, when every lungful of air matters. The master drills again, the familiar rhythm returning. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The holes multiply, creating a field of ventilation across the lower face. Scritch, 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 scritch. The drilling complete, he takes a fine file, carefully chamfering the edges of each hole, removing any sharp bits that might rust or catch. The work is meticulous, demanding, requiring attention to dozens of small details. But these details are what separate adequate from excellent, functional from superior. A helmet with sharp burrs will chafe and cut. A helmet with smooth holes will serve without complaint. The afternoon fades toward evening. The work continues. The helmet is becoming complete, becoming functional, approaching the moment when it can fulfill its purpose. The master's hands are steady despite hours of labor. His focus remains sharp despite the tedium of repetitive filing and drilling. This is the discipline of the craft, the ability to maintain excellence even when tired, even when the work is boring, even when no one is watching. He lifts the helmet from the vise, carries it to the assembly bench. The basic bucket is finished, smooth and cut and drilled, but it is still a single piece, still just a shaped shell. The Great Helm requires additional components, plates that protect the top and face, mechanisms that allow the helmet to be secured and adjusted. The assembly will transform the bucket into a complete protective system. The top plate lies ready on the bench, a circular disc of steel about 8 inches across, slightly domed, its edge turned down to create a flange that will overlap the top rim of the bucket. The master positions this plate over the helmet, checking the fit, ensuring the overlap is even all the way around. The plate sits properly, the geometry matching. Good. He marks through small holes pre-drilled in the top plate, scribing darts on the bucket rim where the rivets will go. 6 rivets, spaced evenly, will join the pieces permanently. He sets the top plate aside, takes a punch, positions it at the first mark. A sharp blow from the hammer and a small dimple appears in the metal, marking the exact center for the drill. The drill bites into the rim of the bucket, cutting through the curved steel. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The hole emerges precisely sized to accept the rivet shaft. He moves to the next mark, drills again. Scritch, scritch, scritch. 6 marks, 6 holes. The preparation is complete. Now the riveting. He positions the top plate once more, aligning the holes, holding it in place with one hand while selecting a rivet with the other. The rivet is a simple device, a short steel rod with a head on one end, designed to pass through both pieces of metal and be hammered on the other side to create a permanent joint. Simple but effective, strong but workable, the fundamental fastener of medieval metalwork. He inserts the first rivet through aligned holes, the shaft passing through top plate and bucket rim, emerging on the inside. He positions a heavy iron block inside the helmet, behind the rivet, providing backing for the hammer blows to come. The helmet rests on a leather pad to protect the polished exterior. He takes a ball-peen hammer, smaller than the raising or planishing hammers, perhaps a pound in weight, precise and controlled. He strikes the protruding end of the rivet shaft, hitting it squarely, beginning to spread the metal. The rivet is soft iron, chosen specifically for its malleability, its willingness to deform and grip. Tink, tink, tink. The blows are light, rapid, controlled. The end of the rivet shaft begins to mushroom, spreading outward, creating a second head that will lock the joint. The master works in a circular pattern, striking around the perimeter of the forming head, encouraging even expansion. Tink, tink, tink. The rivet head grows, flattens, grips tight against the metal. He examines the joint. The rivet is set, the head formed properly, the connections solid. 1 rivet, 5 more to go. He moves to the next hole, inserts the next rivet, begins the same process. Tink, tink, tink. The rhythm is familiar now, another variation on the eternal percussion of the workshop. Tink, tink, tink. Each rivet is set with care, with attention, with the knowledge that these joints will be stressed in combat, will be struck by weapons, will bear the shock of impact. They must be strong. They must hold. They must not fail when a man's life depends on them. So each one is hammered carefully, checked thoroughly, accepted only when perfect. Tink, 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 tink. The 6th rivet is set. The top plate is attached. The master examines the seam where plate meets bucket, running his fingers around the joint, checking for gaps, testing the strength. The joint is solid, the overlap even, the protection complete. The top of the helmet is now closed, sealed, proof against downward blows that might otherwise find the gap. But there is more. The face needs additional protection, a reinforcing plate that covers the area around the eye slits, adding thickness where arrows are most likely to strike. This faceplate is smaller, perhaps 6 inches square, pre-shaped to match the curve of the bucket, with slots cut to match the eye openings. It will be riveted over the front, creating a double thickness of steel at the most vulnerable point. He positions the faceplate, aligns it carefully with the eye slits beneath. The alignment must be perfect, or the knight will be looking at steel instead of through the openings. He checks from the inside, peering through the eye slits, ensuring clear view. The plate shifts slightly. There. Perfect. He marks the rivet locations through pre-drilled holes, sets the plate aside. The punch creates dimples at each mark. The drill cuts through the bucket wall. Scritch, scritch, scritch. 4 holes this time, 1 at each corner of the faceplate. 4 rivets will secure this additional protection. The riveting proceeds as before. Rivet inserted, backing positioned, hammer raised. Tink, tink, tink. The first head forms. The second rivet goes in. Tink, tink, tink. The third, the fourth. The face plate is attached, adding its thickness to the defense, creating layers of protection over the eyes. An arrow striking here will encounter twice the steel, twice the resistance, twice the protection. The helmet is nearly complete now. The bucket shape is smooth and polished. The top is sealed. The face is reinforced. The eyes can see. The mouth can breathe. But it still needs one more element, a way to secure it to the head, to prevent it from shifting or falling in the chaos of combat. The final component, the chin strap and its attachment points. Small holes are drilled near the bottom edge, positioned where straps will pass through, where leather will connect interior padding to exterior buckles. The drill works its familiar magic. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The holes appear, are smoothed, are finished. Metal loops are fashioned from heavy wire, inserted through these holes, hammered closed to create permanent anchors for the leather straps. The assembly is complete. The components are joined. The Great Helm exists now as a unified whole, all its parts working together to create protection, vision, breath, security. The master lifts it from the bench, turns it slowly, examining every surface, every joint, every detail. His eye is critical, searching for flaws, looking for anything that might compromise function or safety. He finds nothing to criticize. The work is good. The helmet is true. The protection is complete. But it is not finished, not quite. The surface is smooth but not protected. Raw steel rusts in air and moisture. The helmet needs one final treatment, a preservative layer that will prevent corrosion, that will keep the polished surface bright and functional. Oil. Simple linseed oil, boiled and cooled, ready to penetrate the metal and seal it against the elements. He pours oil into a wide bowl, saturates a cloth, begins to rub the oil into every surface of the helmet. The metal drinks it, darkens slightly, takes on a deeper luster. The oil fills microscopic pores in the steel, creates a barrier against moisture, provides a protective film that will last until the helmet sees its first combat, its first rain, its first exposure to the elements that will eventually claim all metal given enough time. The master works the oil into every crevice, every rivet head, every edge of every opening. The cloth becomes black with metal particles and oil, but the helmet becomes beautiful, the surface glowing with depth, the curves catching lamplight and holding it, the steel transformed from mere metal into something that seems almost alive. He sets the helmet on a wooden stand, a carved head-shaped form that holds it upright, displays it properly. The helmet sits atop this stand like a silent guardian, faceless, patient, complete. The eye slits stare forward, empty but somehow watchful. The breathing holes whisper slightly in the draft from the door. The polished surface gleams in the forged light and the gathering dusk. The master stands back, looking at what he has created. Hours of work condensed into this single object. Flat steel transformed into curved protection. Raw material refined into crafted purpose. Every hammer blow, every heating cycle, every file stroke, every drill turn, every rivet set. All of it lives in this helmet, invisible but present, the work hidden within the finished product. Tomorrow a knight will come to collect this piece. He will try it on, will check the fit, will test the vision, will breathe through the holes and feel the weight on his neck. He will pay in silver coin, a fair price for skilled labor, and he will ride away with the helmet secured to his saddle. And someday, perhaps soon, perhaps years from now, this helmet will do what it was made to do. It will turn a blade. It will deflect an arrow. It will take a blow meant for the skull beneath. And a man will live who might otherwise have died. This is the meaning of the work. This is why the master hammers for hours, files for days, fusses over details no one will see. This is why every step must be perfect, every joint must be strong, every surface must be smooth. Somewhere, sometime, all this careful work will be tested against chaos and violence. The helmet will either protect or it will fail. There is no middle ground in combat. The master cleans his tools, wiping each one with oiled cloth, returning them to their proper places on the walls and benches. The raising hammer, companion of yesterday's labor. The planishing hammer, friend of today's refinement. The files and drills and punches and chisels, each one a specialized instrument serving its specific purpose. All are cleaned, protected, stored carefully for tomorrow's work, for the next helmet, for the endless continuation of the craft. The apprentice sweeps the floor, gathering metal shavings and coal dust, returning the workshop to order. He empties the bucket of water used for cooling tools, replaces it with fresh water from the well. He banks the forge for the night, arranging coals to maintain a small fire that will make tomorrow's starting easier. He moves quietly, efficiently, performing tasks he has done hundreds of times, tasks that are becoming second nature. The master takes one last look at the finished helmet. It sits on its stand in the dimming light, silent and complete. The surface holds the fading glow of the forge, seems to generate its own light from within. The curves are perfect, the proportions ideal, the function complete. It is a good helmet. It is good work. This is enough. He extinguishes the lamps, follows the apprentice out the door, secures the heavy lock. The workshop falls into darkness, the only light the faint glow from the banked forge, barely visible through cracks around the door. Inside, in the warm darkness, the helmet keeps its silent vigil, waiting for the knight who will claim it, for the battle that will test it, for the moment when all this patient labor will justify itself in the preservation of a single human life. The master walks home through streets now dark, the winter night having fallen completely. Above, stars show between breaks in the cloud cover, cold and distant. His right arm aches from wrist to shoulder, a deep fatigue that will require hot water and rest to ease. But his mind is satisfied. The work is done. The helmet is finished. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new pieces to forge, new transformations to accomplish. But tonight, this helmet is complete, and that completion brings its own reward. His wife has kept dinner warm again, knows his schedule, understands the demands of the craft. He eats slowly, savoring the food, letting the warmth settle into his tired muscles. The fire crackles on the hearth, driving back the winter cold. This is comfort. This is peace. This is the reward for honest labor. Outside, the moon rises, full and bright, flooding the town with silver light. It shines on castle walls and church towers, on workshop roofs and humble homes. And in the armorer's workshop, moonlight finds its way through the high windows, falls on the finished helmet, transforms the oiled steel into something magical, something that seems to glow from within with captured light. The helmet stands guard in the empty workshop, a sentinel without need for rest, protection that never sleeps, the product of hands and skill and endless patience. The eye slits catch the moonlight, seem almost to see. The breathing holes whisper with the slight breeze that finds its way through cracks in the walls. The polished surface reflects the moon, holds it, shares its light with the surrounding darkness. This is what remains when the master sleeps, when the tools rest, when the forge grows cold. The work endures. The helmet stands ready. Protection waits for the warrior who will need it. And somewhere in the night, in the castle above the town, a knight sleeps in his chamber, dreaming perhaps of glory, perhaps of duty, perhaps of nothing at all. Tomorrow he will ride down to the workshop. Tomorrow he will claim this helmet. Tomorrow he will add it to his armor, will integrate it into the steel shell that stands between his flesh and the weapons of his enemies. But tonight, the helmet belongs to the moonlight and the silence, to the peace of completion, to the satisfaction of work finished well. It stands alone, beautiful in its functionality, elegant in its simplicity, perfect in its purpose. The master sleeps in his bed, his wife beside him, his arms still aching but his mind at ease. He has done what he does. He has forged protection. He has transformed metal into meaning. Tomorrow will bring new work, but tonight brings rest. Sleep comes easily after such labor, deep and dreamless, the sleep of exhausted muscles and satisfied mind. Outside his window, the same moon that illuminates the helmet, illuminates the world, touches everything with its gentle light, reminds all who see it that some things endure beyond the chaos of the day. In the workshop, the helmet keeps its watch, silent, patient, complete, the faceless sentinel in the moonlight, guardian of nothing yet guardian of everything, waiting for the moment when it will be needed, when all this careful work will justify itself, when protection will mean the difference between death and life. The night deepens. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The moon climbs toward its zenith, flooding the world with silver. And in the warmth of his bed, the master sleeps the sleep of the righteous, knowing he has done good work, knowing he has served his purpose, knowing that somewhere, sometime, a man will live because of what he has created. This is enough. This has always been enough. The craft serves life. The work protects the worker. The helmet saves the head. And in the quiet hours before dawn, in the space between finishing and beginning again, there is peace. The forge holds its ember core, glowing faintly, keeping the promise of tomorrow's heat. The tools rest on their shelves, clean and oiled, ready for tomorrow's labor. The helmet stands on its wooden head, gleaming softly in the moonlight, complete and perfect and ready. You are safe now. The work is done. The protection is forged. The helmet stands guard while you rest. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles relax. Let the rhythm of the hammer fade from memory into dream. Ring, tink, scritch. The sounds of creation, the music of the craft, the lullaby of transformation. Sleep now. The armorer sleeps. The apprentice sleeps. The helmet watches over them all, silent guardian, faceless protector, the fortress for the mind forged from fire and skill and endless, patient care. The night is deep, the moon is bright, the world is quiet, and you are safe.